All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
All right, I guess we can. All right. We have a quorum. We have one that will be absent, so let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Kendra, roll call.
Alderman Alder,
Here.
Alderman Flores,
Here.
Alderman Galloway is absent, Alderman Poston,
Here.
Alderman Smith,
Here.
Alderman Stewart is absent. We have 4. Alderman present, we have 4.
All right, Mr. Childers.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the, this is March. This is the March breakfast meeting. I gotta get my month about me here. Appreciate it. We're just going to move on, try to get, through your agenda as quickly and clearly as we can. So we're going to start with Jeremy. Jeremy is going to give you some sewer updates. Obviously, we've been doing lots of work underground around town. So Jeremy, if you're ready to share your screen, I'm just going to let you take it away. Can we hear you? You're muted, buddy, so you need to unmute too.
Jeremy, you are muted. We can't hear you.
He's trying.
Oh, okay.
Looks like.
Is this trigger hooked up?
How about now? Can you all hear me and see my screen? Hello?
Turn your light up.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry. If everybody can see my screen here, wanted to give you a quick update. We actually have 3 items on the agenda today, so it's a public works day again, but we are right now gearing up for some significant sewer updates, primarily to our old plant. And I wanted to walk you guys through that just to let you know what we're looking at. Here's a site plan of our we call the north plant or the old plant. Everybody knows that this is kind of directly south of the McDonald's and that area over there. We are specifically talking about clarifiers and valves at first today. If you can see my pointer, these 2 clarifiers 3 and 4, we'll just kind of run through some of the specifics about them and why we're choosing to do both of them at once. All of this was budgeted for. Most of this was budgeted for. Some things we're going to change or propose changing, but there'll be no net increase in the overall budget for sewer. We're just kind of moving some stuff around. And basically that's just because over the past few months, we've had some pretty significant operations and maintenance issues, more on the valve side, but specifically, probably even more importantly, on clarifiers 3 and 4. So right now we've got a bid out for all the mechanical components that will replace clarifiers 3 and 4. These both have some age on them. We had originally talked to just about doing 4 this year, but because of some economies of scale, we felt like it'd be better just to tackle them both. And I'm going to run you through what that basically does. I'm not going to get too involved in the process, but that open invitation is always there. If anybody wants to come out to the sewer plant, Ted, I'm still counting on you before you get out of here. But it's pretty fascinating, to be honest. But these clarifiers, I'm not going to get overly into the details, the gory details, but when we talk about the underbelly of the city, this is about as underbelly-ish as you can get. This is where the influent from all the different gravity lines and lift stations end up to kind of think of this as kind of a refining process. What I mean by refining is that you're basically taking the heavier and larger, the particles, we'll call them particles, and settle to the bottom of the clarifier. So imagine raw sewage coming in after you run this through our clarifiers, a system of clarifiers, and several other steps. We end up with sludge, is what you see when we're out there land applying in the fields. And that's a great bioproduct of sewer. It's very, it does a great job for some of our local farmers. They love it, and it helps us out as well. So that's just a quick breakdown, clarifier basics, if you will. That's what we call that chart. And let's move on to the camera system. I just wanted to give you some updates overall. We are currently also in the process of purchasing 2 sewer line vehicle inspection camera systems. And you see some big expenses. We budgeted for them last year, but we're in the process of getting those. We did have to go with Q's, which is a kind of a local company that does sewer camera equipment. And the reason we decided to go with them is that they can tailor their software to what specifically works for us. And our GIS department and our sewer guys and all of Public Works uses a asset management software known as Beehive. And what was so appealing about this camera system is basically it syncs up and is extremely compatible. It can kind of be customized to make our Beehive software that much more valuable. So that's a big bonus for us. When we talk about camera systems, I know this looks like something off of Star Wars, but these are the actual rovers, if you will, the vehicles that are going through the pipes and giving us some insight as to what the condition is. If we didn't have these, we would have never known that last downtown project could be tackled through CIPP. I don't know if you can see this. I'm not going to play too many gory details, but I do want you to kind of see what that looks like going through a sewer line. And I'll try to fast forward a little bit here and show you a common problem that we have. In this case, we were inspecting a sewer line, and Roto-Rooter had beat us to it. This is a sewer connection, a lateral connection that the camera is looking at. Remember, our guys are controlling this camera, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong. Well, this became pretty evident. Looks like Roto-Rooter, a local plumber, got their equipment in there, and they just gave up. We offered to give it back to them, but they didn't want it. So, but that's kind of a short version of what's going on underneath, but that is so valuable to us. And as you're going through these different pipes in our problem areas, you're documenting everything, what manhole, what station, what you're seeing, the condition. So and that pumps all into our Beehive. So we've got a really good snapshot of what's going on underneath the ground, which is so important to us because, in Public Works, what goes on under the ground is as important or more important than what goes on the ground. So I wanted to give you an update there. That's kind of the clarifiers and the camera system. We got a lot to talk about, so if I'm moving too fast, slow me down. But what we decided to do with these clarifiers, we'd originally put some money in our maintenance of treatment plant, and we had a large chunk of money over at what we call the West Oak Street mess. And for those people that aren't familiar with that area, that is basically an area directly to the south of Adams Funeral Home in the downtown here. We know that that's a problem. We're probably 95% through engineered drawings. We know the solution for that area. But just like in any business, priorities pop up. And in this case, when the clarifiers started acting up, that's kind of the much more critical component to our sewer system. So we have done a great job, and kudos to the guys for getting what we call the Oak Street mess to a level of service where we can actually maintain it, and we're not having as many problems over there. So we've put a lot of fixes in place over there. We haven't done the ultimate fix, which is a rip out and replace of everything over there. So that's what we had budgeted for this year. $750,000 was what we budgeted for the Oak Street mess. Because of the problems we're having with the clarifiers, we're going to take
Hey, Jeremy,
450 of
Jeremy,
yeah.
Jeremy, excuse me, somebody's not here.
Of some things and bought some time. Nonetheless, I and Nixa CA Jimmy Miles will be meeting in with Judge
Have
Johnson
somebody
in the next couple of weeks to discuss the future of municipal court, and from that I again will update you. Do you want to reply?
No.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Bruce, it's not muted.
Yeah, you can tell because they have a little thing in the
Yeah,
corner.
I know.
Yeah, so.
It's gone now. Okay, I'm sorry, Jeremy, whoever, we got that taken care of. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're taking 450,000 of that Oak Street mess and transferring that to the maintenance of the treatment plant. We've put out for bid those two clarifiers that we talked about just now, clarifiers 3 and 4, as well as some very significant gate and valve system, telescoping valves that control all the flow for this. So when I say how this impacts the budget, the bottom line has not changed. We are simply transferring a line item from sewer maintenance of lines to a maintenance of treatment plant. So there's no net increase in here. And then that 750, we're also going to be transferring about 300,000 of that for new equipment, and we will talk about that a little later. I think that is on the next part of the agenda. If I'm reading the latest agenda right, I believe, well, let me show you this real quick. So just so everybody's clear, and this is a little tough to see, but this is the approved Board of Aldermen budget for 2021, City of Ozark budget. So you can see we're just moving this down from sewer, for maintenance of sewer lines, down to maintenance of sewer treatment plant. So again, no net increase. I'm going to stop right there for a second because we talked clarifiers, we talked cameras, we talked bids. Before we go on to the next budget item, our next agenda item, sidewalk widening, do we have any questions?
Jeremy, I've got a question about the Oak Street mess. I understand that we are, there's not a budget increase, we're just transferring funds from one to another. Is there any chance at all that the Oak Street mess, as you call it, is going to rear its ugly head and require more attention than we think this year?
I think, and that's why I was kind of giving kudos to our guys. We've done what we call a lot of point repairs of those really troubled areas, Mr. Mayor, where we were having consistent backups and things of that nature. We've replaced certain sections of the pipe. We also have a much more aggressive sawing program over there where we actually come in and saw the lines and get the roots out of there. So I can't promise you it's not going to rear its ugly head, and that it does have an ugly head. But I can tell you we're much more prepared in that area based upon the point repairs that we've done so far.
Okay, so you feel that it's safe to postpone that, in other words?
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you just a little bit, but.
You say you feel like it's safe to postpone the Oak Street for a while?
Yeah.
The work that the guys are doing.
Yeah, this has been, yeah, I really think it is. Again, it could pop up at any time, but you might remember this is the same area that we did a really aggressive campaign to go over there and put backflow valves in. So we went over there, met with the neighborhood, got all these easements, and put these backflow valves in. And that's what was occurring over there. There was some backups that would then ultimately end up into some of the homes, which is very costly, and nobody likes to deal with sewer in the house. I mean, we spent a lot of time over there trying to make that right. So I think we're in a better position than we've ever been, but I don't want us to lose sight of this. I know we're kicking the can down the road a little bit, but it will have to be addressed. We'll probably put it back in the budget for next year.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on clarifiers, cameras, bids, anything of that nature? Okay. I'm going to keep sharing here, Sam. Let's talk about trails. This is always fun. Trail and sidewalk updates. As you can see, the ESS is slowly but surely, ESS is the contractor for the Jackson Street project. They are slowly but surely, as weather permits and as rock permits, progressing with the stormwater components of the Jackson Street project. I want to kind of back up and say, remember that, you know, it's about a 5-year process to get from concept to build out. We were looking at the Jackson Street and the South Street plans back in 2016 is when we really started diving into those plans. And one thing that we're very happy that has occurred since 2016 is we've got this great project known as the Chadwick Flyer. And I'm sure we'll have other meetings about that. We've got another visioning committee meeting on April 1st, but we have a lot of good things going here. And if I'd had a crystal ball back in 2016, I would have said we need to do some additional improvements to the area from 12th Street, which is right by the junior high, all the way down to the OC. Those little blue lines represent the 2 underpasses that are already in place. Through this section, and I think Alderman Poston and I have talked about this as well with other projects, you know, as we become more trail friendly and pedestrian friendly, we want to try to avoid putting sidewalk at the back of curb. And we also want to make sure that the widths are comfortable enough for not just walking, but for cyclists as well. So what we're looking at here, remember, all through this area, just next to Cash Saver, they currently have built that retaining wall. It's all torn up. All that sidewalk has been removed. Well, when MoDOT designed this project, they're not in the sidewalk business. And by that I mean they don't build new sidewalk unless you pay for it, or unless they have to tear it up. They will replace it. So the sidewalk along this section that's identified in white is currently 6 feet wide. As we've gotten further along in this project and things have kind of shaken out with some of the elevations and the retaining wall and that CME wall that's going up just to the north of Cash Saver and those apartments, we finally figured out that we have a real opportunity here. And we knew that this day may come, but now that we've got all the elevations and we know exactly what we're working with, we have an opportunity to expand the sidewalk along from 12th Street all the way to the OC underpass from 6 feet to 10 feet. And I know that you're thinking, well, 4 feet, but that is a huge difference. That's a huge difference for cyclists, for bikes. And then the reason I put this graph in there, this picture in here, is look at the amount of just buildings that the school currently has. And you probably heard me say this before, but this sidewalk in this corridor is turning into what amounts to a campus corridor. Between all their buildings and their facilities, we didn't even identify some of the, the ball fields in this. This is just the major buildings. But there is a lot of uses in this area that will see pedestrian traffic. So what we've done, once we figured all that out, we went back to the plans and we started modifying to see, all right, is there enough room to make these additions? If so, what would they cost? So we started right here at 12th Street. The junior high would be over here, if you can see my cursor. We're going to make those improvements right there to, that'd be the west of that intersection on the south side. and we're going to keep those improvements going. This goes down to the school underpass, so additional 4 feet through there. It keeps rolling. I call it the next section First Baptist because it's right in front of them. Oh, another key point, we have all the right-of-way and easements, so that's not needed in this process. We've got it. It's just a matter of constructing it and funding it. In front of the post office, we've got the room now that they've hammered out the majority of that rock. We can up that to a 10-foot sidewalk and then take it all the way to the OC, where they have damaged quite a bit of our sidewalk as part of the project, but it'll be replaced. So just to summarize that, I think we talked about the pedestrian and cyclist benefits. We're looking at somewhere between $80,000 to $100,000 in a change order on this to get almost 1,600 linear feet of expanded sidewalk. That is a really good price, and just because they're already there, ESS is already there, they're already tearing up the sidewalk, and they're already pouring 6 feet of sidewalk. So this is one of those situations where we knew if the opportunity presented itself, we were going to try to take this to you all and say, hey, here's the opportunity, here's the cost. We know that this will be heavily traveled. Again, this was all pre-engineered back before the Chadwick Flyer. So a lot of things have gotten traction since then. And I can't wait to give you an update on the Chadwick Flyer at some meeting. We will. But there is a lot of good things going here. So this is our opportunity to seize the moment and make it the appropriate width. With that, I am going to stop right there and take any questions.
Well, I've got a question. I understand what's being done. It looks like a great idea, and I think the school will be absolutely thrilled with that. But you say the cost for the change order, do we have that budgeted? Is that something that we can do, that 80 to 100,000?
Yeah, after speaking with Steve and after looking at our current budget, I believe this is feasible. And the reason it ranges so much from 80 to 100, there's that gap there, is we're currently working with them on a lighting plan to try to utilize that CME wall or that rock retaining wall that they just built, so that we can place our lighting right on that. That would save us some significant money. So that's kind of why there's a range from 80 to 100. But Steve, you jump in here. I think we're in a good position right now to make these changes.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question, and it's always a question we should always ask. And certainly when Jeremy brings these opportunities to me, the first thing I do is say, how are we going to pay for it? So when you're working in the budget, you have so many moving projects within the line items of the budget, like whether it be sidewalks, paving, those types of things. You just go into the other projects and you see where you can save money here and move money there, and go back to the projects and reevaluate them just to see if there's money to be saved, so you can shift it over somewhere else. So really you have a line item that's broad because it has so many projects in it. And so then I challenge Jeremy to go back and say, okay, if you think this is where you want to put your priority, then you need to go back to the other, not taking any of the projects away, but you got to go back and find a way to save money on the other one. So that being said, yes, I think we've got adequate funds budgeted in the appropriate line items to pay for this change order. And so, yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Do you have a question, RJ? Go ahead, RJ.
Yeah, I was curious. You mentioned 1,600 feet. Is that a square foot, or is that just total distance from one end to the other?
Yeah, that's linear footage. So if you were to take that and then by 4 feet wide, I've got the number here in front of me, but that's a pretty significant amount of, I was giving you the linear running footage. I've got it right here. Let me look, RJ.
I'm gonna assume that you're saying that they're doing it for a good price. We're getting a good price per yard there on that new sidewalk
Absolutely.
addition?
So we're looking at almost 700 square yards by the time it's all said and done of concrete. If you take that and put that into square footage and then calculate the square yards of concrete. So the thing that's so appealing again is they're right there and they're already tearing it up. And to add that additional 4 feet, we're getting such a good unit cost on that. So, and I think it'll pay off I know it'll pay off in the end. I think this is going to be so heavily traveled. I think this thing, I may be a little biased, but I think this Chadwick Flyer thing is pretty special.
Gotcha. And so comparatively to what we normally pay for sidewalks, you consider that a good deal?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
Are we good?
if there are no other questions, go ahead, Jeremy.
It looks like the parking ordinance is next, so I'm going to hand that over to Cameron,
Three, I think.
but I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Item number 3 is something that it's an ordinance that we put in place about a decade ago. It's the parking ordinance. About a decade ago, I don't believe we had anything in place for parking. So at the time when I was in the planning department, we were working. Wow, it had been longer than that then. We were working on putting in place an ordinance that would determine how much parking would go with a new land use, what the parking requirements would be, for apartments or for commercial or shopping center or whatever that might be. And we looked at the models around the area, and we used Springfield very heavily, but we also modified that to fit the needs of Ozark at that time. Well, as I said, that's been over a decade since we had looked at that. Certainly the land use, guidelines have changed around the country, the way development has happened. It's just a different world for parking. I think that our goals have changed where we want to have adequate parking, but we really want to try to reduce the impervious surface footprint to try to accommodate for better stormwater management. We want to use greener options. We don't want to just put a sea of parking out there if we don't have to. So we've gone back and I'm going to leave that up to Cameron to explain that. But we've got some new multifamily uses, obviously, that have been proposed since we've made our sewer connection fees. And part of that was parking. So I asked Cameron to go back and dig into that, and he did. He did a great job, and he did the research, and he took it to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting, and he explained it to them, and they made a recommendation. So I just felt like it would be important for Cameron to be able to go through that, explain to you some background in that, so that when you do see the ordinance to make the revision, that you would know why. So Cameron, take it away.
Yes, so that was a pretty good broad overview, and don't know if there's a lot to add, but anyway, we'll go through the parking ordinance in a little bit more detail. That's correct. We've been kind of tasked with looking at the current ordinance and kind of evaluating where it is today versus when it was drafted originally. We have also have had concerns mentioned to us by primarily developers and other potential applicants about some of the additional requirements or burden requirements of additional parking that may be unnecessary for developments, and they've kind of challenged us to look into this as well. And as we all know, we hear that we are compared with Nixon, Springfield, so they would often compare us to those municipalities in our neighboring areas. And to be honest, we got to be somewhat competitive. We got to kind of make sure we're kind of in line with everyone else. And so that's what we've done. We've kind of evaluated our ordinance that we had in place, looked at Nixa, looked at Springfield, kind of picked up on some of the what they require, some of the alternatives or modifications or allowances or creative ideas that may be able to allow the developer to be a little more creative with some of the parking requirements. So in looking at this ordinance, the first thing that we did look at was, and this was primarily just addressed because it's something we've been challenged with in the past and wasn't real clear. But to the surfacing, outdoor storage areas, we've added a little clarification in there about those could be in a graveled area. What we were running into, And this was coming up on some landscape facilities or nurseries where they want to stock their nursery stock. And it doesn't make any sense to have those storage areas that may be having some vehicular traffic on those paved. It just doesn't make sense at all for storing planting material. So we thought we'd clarify that outdoor storage areas may be of a gravel surface. These are areas that are generally fenced or enclosed in, maybe a stock of supplies that aren't normally accessible or accessed by the public. Could be even, we ran into this on the granite supply place. It doesn't make sense to pave the entire outdoor storage area just to supply or store some granite slabs. The other thing about parking is any additional parking that we require in the city is a bigger burden on stormwater. I mean, they've got to calculate and complete the detention design based on the additional impervious area. So any way that we can find out how to reduce parking or look at alternative options for parking, that is a benefit to the parking or the stormwater requirements in the city and the additional runoff. Also, as we went through the parking chart, one of the items that was quickly coming to light was the multifamily residential. Our current ordinance requires 2 parking stalls for a 1-bedroom unit. And as staff began to look at this ordinance and comparing to other municipalities, we did realize that maybe this is a little excessive. Maybe we need to rely a little more on the developers to kind of give us some guidance on what they might feel as a better fit for their development. So we took that opportunity to revise that to be 1.5 stalls per bedroom or single family facility, and being more in line with some of our neighboring communities. In addition to that, we are working in some reduction benefits to the developer. If there's a way that they can look at reducing the requirements, then we can work on those and evaluate those at the same time. In addition, we've kind of went through the rest of the spreadsheet, clarifying some items that were not in there before, clarifying items that we did compare to other municipalities to see that maybe we are requiring additional parking that may not be necessary. And again, a lot of times the property owner developer has probably a better feel of their customers and what they might need for their facility. At the end of the parking requirements or the chart, we've also worked in some additional clarifications. One thing we've never considered in the past was bike parking reductions or allowances for bike parking. We do require in some of our overlays that bike parking is provided. But in this case, we've taken an example from Springfield where they do allow a reduction, not a big reduction, but do allow some reductions if they accommodate by adding bike racks to their facilities. I think this would also help promote that future expansion of alternative modes of transportation and getting these bike lanes or trails developed. Also, we've put a little clarification in there. If there is a use that we are not thinking of or have not been aware of or worked with in the past, we are allowing ourselves some flexibility to work with the developer or the applicant to and compare with other communities to determine what might be the best fit for parking. We were constantly running into this with sports facilities as we didn't have a lot of information in our ordinance about parking requirements for sports facilities. We also clarified that the decrease in parking, if they choose to look at some decrease options, can exceed a 20% range. And then the last alternative that they can look at doing is maybe some more beautifications of parking. Maybe if they want to look at reducing some of the parking requirements in alternative, what we're anticipating or expecting is they provide some additional beautifications of a parking lot, of some additional landscape. So in evaluating this, in the reductions overall, I mean, it does make a big impact, I believe, on not single family, but multifamily. But overall, in clarifying some of the other uses, it's not a lot of reduction. Staff is excited about this ordinance, is comfortable with this ordinance. Don't see that it's going to create such an unnecessary issue. And also it does show that we're trying to work with those developers and try to be comparative to our neighbors in other cities to being somewhat competitive with them and kind of requiring the similar parking requirements. Yes, that is correct. On the last Monday's evening that we did ask the P&Z Commission to make a recommendation to the board as we have a few opportunities coming up quickly with developments, and we'd like to get this in place as soon as we can. granted that everyone is okay with this revision, is happy with this revision, and don't have concerns. With that, I'd be happy.
Okay, so you're wanting us to review, pardon me, you're wanting us as a Board of Alderman Chandler, or Cameron, to review this, and you want to put this on the first meeting in April for first reading? Is that your proposal?
Not first read, not in April. It won't make that deadline.
You won't make
No,
it that fast?
no,
No.
It'll be on the second meeting in April.
Okay.
Reading.
Yeah, we really just wanted to bring this to your attention. Again, we are constantly trying to find ways to improve speed to market for our developers. We're constantly trying to find ways to go back into our ordinances. We know that, look, if an ordinance isn't working or time has changed, and then you need to go back and review that ordinance and try to bring it to the current standards that the developers can work with, the architects, the engineers, the design professionals. And so this is just another example of Ozark listening and recognizing that, look, times have changed. We have ordinances that are over a decade old. They worked when they worked, but now we need to go back and review them. And so when we do that, kind of probably sounds to a lot of people dorky from a planning staff type of perspective, and me being one of them, I know, because I was here with Chuck Branch. I think was was the head of the committee when we created the park ordinance. But we take a lot of pride in going back into our ordinance and digging in there and being able to come back to the board and our planning and zoning commission and say, listen, we've gone back in, we've reviewed this, we've listened to our developers and our design professionals are saying this, and we think we found a really good solution. So I don't know, that we just take a lot of pride in that. And I like the opportunity for these breakfast meetings to be able to kind of bring this to you before it's just stuck on an agenda and you say, boy, what's the deal with the parking ordinance? So that's why I really like these breakfast meetings, because it gives you opportunity to visit with staff and ask Cameron questions, so that, hey, if there's something that you wonder why he might have reduced a parking space or something, you can ask him,
Yeah,
I'm just really happy with it.
Yeah, that's correct. And that was the intent of this, to really have it out there in front of you before it's on first reading of it in a few weeks. And so it gives you an opportunity to evaluate, read this in more detail. I believe Chandler did forward this to you guys all yesterday, as far as the revised ordinance that was approved by the P&Z Commission. But be happy to answer any questions prior to the meeting in April, or we'll plan to answer any questions in April as well.
Cameron, I don't have a question, but I want to say both to you and Steve and everybody, I like where it's going. So thank you.
Okay, if there are any other questions about the parking, I guess not. All right, we'll go on to the next item. Steve, are you taking that, or Jeremy?
No, well, it's going to be a team effort here. I actually want Mary is going to jump on, and she is going to probably share her screen and give you a background. And the reason why this says explanation of cold storage, you all may have already been past this and you're probably not even thinking about this. But again, I want to keep the board informed. We have made some very significant decisions that, although at the time you make that decision, they're all a part of a bigger plan. They're all a part of creating bigger opportunities for the city of Ozark. And what I mean by that is, it wasn't a few years ago that we bought that building to use as offsite evidence storage for our police department, as well as some limited cold storage. Well, as you all know, we have recently sold that building. And I simply like to be able to go back and explain what that means, because although it may seem like, we bought a building and we sold a building, that's no big deal. When you really look at the accounting of how we have to make sure that is done right, it's a very, very detailed situation, and there's many, many steps. And so I wanted to have Mary give you the background so that you could see where we began this journey of this is what we paid for this and how we paid for it, and where that led us to today, which were other opportunities that Sam worked on to build a second cold storage. and then how that has sort of evolved. And then Jeremy will go into a little bit more about cold storage building number 3. But you need to see what I'm talking about to understand that. So Mary, I'm going to let you walk them through the numbers, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, does everybody see the screen, the Excel spreadsheet?
We can see the screen.
Okay. So this is the sale of the cold storage building. That's what I'm going to talk about first, because it's actually 2 separate transactions. We purchased that for $523,500 in 2017. We sold it for $567,000. When we purchased it, we put about $97,000 down, and that's what you see, that general fund, water fund, and sewer, actually department. Each contributed at $32,579.28 for the down payment when we bought that building. The lease payments by the water and sewer fund were each $93,734 over in 2018, 19, and 20, and we collected $82,700 in lease income. I believe the Systems Broadband, and there was a Yardworks business that leased some space there. So when you reduce the payments by the water fund paid for the building by the lease income, their outlay was $104,768. The general fund paid $53,157 in lease payments. That's to pay the note down. When I say lease payment, that's we lease that from the PFC so that they can pay the note payment. That's how much the general fund on behalf of the PD, because a big portion of that for evidence storage. When they moved their evidence storage into that building, they spent $44,000 of federal forfeiture funds to renovate it and put in the necessary improvements that they needed to utilize it for that purpose. So from the 300 at the very beginning, after we paid the bank off, the $321,949 is what we got back after all the bank was paid off. When we reimbursed those funds for those amounts, the down payment, the lease payments, and the federal forfeiture funds, there's $22,000 remaining, and of course that will stay with the water fund because that was their asset. That's the story of, so basically we used that building for 4 years, and at the end of that, nobody was out any money. So that's a pretty fair sale of that building and good use of that. So the next transaction is the purchase, so to speak, of the, let me move this down, from the water department of the building that they built. They built a building with approximately 4,000 square feet for $180,000, which works out to about $45 a square foot. The police department, of course, no longer has an evidence room, so they are going to use 61% of that, or 2,450 square feet. So they are going to reimburse the water fund $110,250, which is their portion of that building. The general fund and the water fund are going to use the other 39% of that building for storage. And that equates to $34,875 apiece. Well, of course, the water fund has already contributed their portion because they paid for the total construction. But the general fund will reimburse them $34,875 for our portion. When you talk about storage, when the general fund will store records from the finance department, administration, so those cover all of the funds, everything that we do for the city. The water department will probably use some storage for their records there, and there'll be a lot of benefit to having a space like that. So the general fund is going to actually reimburse the water and sewer fund $145,000, $145,125 to compensate for the purchase of that building. And that's basically all of it. Any questions?
I know, guys, again, I just always want to keep you very informed. I mean, this probably will seem very boring, but I just really want to make sure that you understand that we spend a lot of due diligence on making sure that the money that was spent goes back to the place that it's supposed to. And Mary does a great job at that. So, again, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy and kind of let him take you a little bit further into where we're going now.
Okay, so I explained the finances of that, and everything's worked out well there. This is the current cold storage building, and I want to kind of give you a brief historical overview of this, and let me show you this slide too real fast. This will show you, again, the old treatment plant. This is where we built that building that I'm showing you in this slide. It's 4,000 square feet, 50 by 80. This was a bit of a bear to build. It's one of those weird buildings that's, not quite big enough to attract the big contractors, and not, and too big to attract the smaller contractors. So we actually put this out to bid 4 times. Our original bid estimate came in at $640,000. And I'm happy to say, and this is a kudos to the crew again, we built that thing for $180,000. Now then Chief Arnold got wind of it and decided to steal this building. No, I'm joking. It's a good building. It's a tight building. It's a building that we've needed for quite some time. You know the history of the Lipscomb building and how that all worked out. So this building that you're seeing on this very cold day that we took this picture is now primarily all record storage. So that kind of leaves us, remember, we've had 4 or 5 years where we're trying to build a building and get the equipment under roof. That's the big thing here. We've got a lot of very, very high-tech and expensive equipment with the vac trucks and the sewer equipment and the sewer camera equipment. So these are things that we need to get under roof to protect, because those are assets. Again, to get this done, we kind of had to get creative, and we did a design build, a version of a design build to get this done for the 180. So again, back to this site plan right here. Green represents the one that you just saw pictures of. We are proposing a new storage building, a larger storage building, where we currently have what we call drying beds, and we would actually preserve 1 drying bed. And there's a few reasons for that. There's some advantages here. We can utilize the old drying beds, and there's a lot of concrete in place, which is going to save us some significant money. If you're in the building business right now, you know that it is expensive to build. It doesn't matter, stick build, iron build, and concrete. It's tough. And by utilizing this existing building, we're going to be able to use a lot of concrete that's already in place, which helps save us some significant cost. We're going to tackle this again like we did the other building, a design build. You all have worked with us to get Smith & Edwards Construction under contract. They are a builder. This has worked out so well, because we can work side by side with them and self-perform certain aspects of the building and get this thing done so much more efficiently and less expensive than putting this out to the bid. Because as we saw with the 4 bids that we put out for the original building, it just wasn't cost effective to do it any other way. They're a proven builder, they're a proven partner, and they build a good product. So I'm not going to get into all these numbers, but I want you to know that I'm estimating somewhere around $400,000. We talked about how that would be paid for. This would set us up for the next decade in terms of storage. We had the Lipscomb building, then we had this building, and now we're actually down to less storage than we've had over the last 10 years. So we need to get something under roof. We feel like this is a proven method of getting a building built and delivered, And we feel like by utilizing the existing foundations and concrete work that's already in place, there's certainly some economic benefits to that as well. And then I just wanted to kind of show you, this is a simple building, guys. We don't build Taj Mahals. We build for functionality, not for form. So I had fun yesterday and put together a little elevation of the buildings and colored them in, and it reminded me of my days at an architecture firm. So, and I know this is not fancy, but I just wanted you, I'm a visual person. I wanted you to kind of get a feel for what this building will look like. And with that, I will take any questions.
All right, any questions from the board? Okay, Heather.
So if this is proposed, if this passes, when do you see start of construction and hopefully completion?
I would like to see completion done by October of this year.
Okay.
That would get everything under roof by the time the cold weather starts coming back in. So, and that timeline has been told is completely feasible with Smith and Edwards, and then our guys sharing some of the work burden.
So the cost, you don't see the cost changing. It's pretty accurate.
I hope. I think we're right on the money right now. I put 400. If you really look at the estimate, I've gotten it as low as 360. I just would rather under promise and over deliver. So I just want people to have that 400 in mind, and that is a reflection of construction costs. Construction costs are very expensive, and they seem to be going up daily if you talk to builders. But this design build method that we're using has proven to be the most cost efficient way to get things done. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Jeremy,
you.
Since you're using existing concrete, is that going to be a steel truss that's just bolted to the concrete? Or it's not a pole barn type structure, is it?
Yeah, let me share this again, and I'll kind of let you see some of the details. But so what we'd be doing is tying into some of the existing concrete, and then pouring a slab. So we have a tie-in to the existing concrete and foundation, and then we pour a solid slab over those entire beds so that we can have a parking area under roof. But if we did some test digging out on site where the drying beds are, those are some sturdy footers and sturdy foundation. So we're able to keep the total cubic yards. Now that's still a lot of concrete. When you look at that, 189 is still a lot of concrete. But that's much less than we would have used had we not gone with choosing this location. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. I was just, the main construction of the building, is it going to be steel truss or wood?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's steel. We've got a bid package out right now for a steel package for the building. Because of the dimensions, we did the last one as a stick built, but because of the dimensions of this building and kind of the uniqueness, we did some preliminary testing on prices, and it came back that we could be more competitive with steel. So it'll be a steel frame on concrete with a metal exterior.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Parsons? Okay, I guess not. Steve, you want the next one?
Yeah, really number 5 is just an update. You know, we talk a lot about our telecom carriers, not telecom, but our internet providers, if you will. And it has been, I think it's a challenge for our citizens, our businesses. I think it's a challenge for us in just working with those carriers. We see those carrier companies, you know, constantly selling to another holding group and another holding group. And so you've got this ever-changing list of people, or you don't even know who you're supposed to call anymore when a problem occurs. And so there's a few things that have happened. So in working with our sister city over here in Nixa, the city administrator, Jimmy Lyles, and I were having a conversation, and we knew we were both receiving complaints from our citizens that, you know, we don't like the service that we have. It's just not something that we think is up to snuff for our area. So we worked for months to try to get the right people on the phone. And then just the other day, Jimmy and I were able to set up a Zoom meeting with the corporate leaders of Suddenly. So we had a great Zoom meeting. And I just really wanted to let you know that we're trying. We're in a very challenging market. You know, there are a lot of people out there that say, well, why doesn't Ozark let other carriers come in here? We don't tell carriers to come in here or not to come in here. We don't have any control over whether a new cable provider comes into the city of Ozark or not. Pretty much all of the control that we've had with regards to managing right-of-way or those types of things associated with telecom or cable have been removed at the municipal level through new legislation that has been passed at the state level that has taken away any authority that we've had over any of that. We can still permit certain things, but there's a lot of stuff that we just simply can't do. And the other part of that is it's a matter of economics. You know, in our conversations with AT&T, who does have a system called AT&T Uverse over in Nixa, and that runs all the way to the east through Fremont Hills, and it dead ends right at the border of Fremont Hills. And their comment that they made to me is that, look, it makes no sense whatsoever for us to extend under Highway 65 to come over to Ozark, spend millions and millions and millions of dollars for a handful of customers. So it's really a matter of economics. If these businesses are not going to see the return on investment that they're going to make, then, you know, we've got the companies that we have most likely, and we definitely have some other companies like Total High Speed that, you know, is a wireless company, but they're wanting to get into the fiber business. And so you've got some local companies that are coming along, but look, our biggest provider is Suddenly. So the goal of mine and the goal of the city of Nixa was to try to make a better connection and relationship with the Suddenly Corporation, and we've done that. And I just wanted to let you know that an example of that just took place the other day. We now have emails and people, and we're going to have regular quarterly meetings, and we're going to be able to talk about our frustrations and the things that are going on, from our businesses to our residents to the many, many people that are now working from home. I think Alderman Poston can certainly testify to this, that, hey, that's the way that it's going. And so we have to have a better way of servicing our in-home offices. So that being said, the other day, we had been waiting for 2 years, I think, to try to get some overhead fiber underground and the poles removed. And now the Jackson Street project is going on, and those poles are still there, and that overhead line is still there. It only took me one email to the right person to get them connected with MoDOT, and now that is underway. That is taking place. Another thing that we saw is, you've probably heard.
Steve, I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just a second? Did you say that on 14, the poles are coming down?
There are, in the Jackson Street project, right there between the workshop and Come and Go, there are a lot of poles, and you'll just see like a fiber cable hanging on that pole. We're trying to get that underground while we're working on these other big projects. So, you know, but you got to have that company that's willing to do that. And so now we're trying to move that forward. So, we're making small progress, but they're working. Another thing is that our subdivisions, it has always been, and it is written in our franchise agreement with this company, that until there is 100 new homes built in a subdivision, they won't go in and lay any of the fiber. They won't put in but not when the ditches are open and the developer is working in there, when it's all torn up. They wait until the customer is there to go back in and get the customer signed up. Now that has changed. They have made a corporate decision with this new owner. I think Algonquin or somebody has now bought them out of New York. And now, even though it's Suddenlink, it's owned by another holding company. That's not the case anymore. So now what we have done is I have connected our planning director with the right individuals at Suddenlink, and they want to know in advance, look, what preliminary plats are you working on so that we can get into that neighborhood and we can get that conduit in the ground so that we can get fiber there faster. And that's a huge accomplishment. I mean, that's a big deal because I know we've talked to people, the mayor and I both, that I just moved to Ozark. I'm from another state. I work from home, and you're telling me I'm the 10th house in here and I can't have cable or I don't have any internet for X amount of time. We're hopefully going to get rid of that. So that was a big accomplishment. I just wanted to let you guys know that. And then the third thing, it might not seem like a big deal, but during this winter, it sure was. I don't know if you've ever driven around Ozark and you've seen a new connection and they just lay the wire from a house right across the road to a pole. It's just laying there. It's not buried or anything. Well, when our snow plows were out this year, we were snapping those things in two like that because they were buried under the snow, and we would just go through and it would get cut. And then the subcontractor would come back and they just reconnect it and lay that line right back on the road again. And when we brought this up to the corporate individuals they said, I don't know what you mean because that should never happen. And I said, well, is it a cost of boring under the road? They're like, it should never be a cost. That isn't even the situation. So what that brought to light was that there is a disconnect from the corporate side because they use subcontractors. And so now they realize that they have to have their subcontractors doing a better and different job. And the minute that they set up a new service, you're not just going to lay the line across the road and let people run over it anymore. You need to take care of it and bury it for everybody's benefit. So I guess if I could say anything, I think that the contact was great. I think the constant communication we're going to have is great. And I think that we kind of knocked out a couple of things that we struggle with. So I really wanted to bring that report back to you and let you know that I'm working on that. We're trying. Both Ozark and Nixa are recognizing the same challenges, but we teamed up together to have a bigger conversation, and that went really well. So if you have any questions or things you want me to bring up as I continue these conversations, just email me, let me know, and I'll keep asking. So,
Right.
Anyway, that's all I had there.
All right, that looks like the last agenda item. Are there any questions from the board on any of these items before we adjourn? Yes, Heather.
What a lot of people ask me is Suddenlink ever going to have an office back in the area?
Yeah, I will ask that question, but the indication that I got on the phone was that it's probably not likely. They did say that they recognize, and I said this from a personal standpoint, I said your service stinks. You know, when you call, you can't get any help, you can't understand. I personally was on the phone the other day for 45 minutes with 7 different people, and I literally just gave up. I just said, I got to go. I can't do this anymore. And so they said they are investing $20 million in call center training and trying to improve their call center situation and processes. So I don't know that they'll have a physical location here, but they do recognize that they have some big issues. So.
Okay, thank you.
They have another big issue that really aggravates me, Steve, and maybe others. I have bundled Suddenlink at home, which means I have landline, which I don't use, internet and television. And it's in the neighborhood of $160, $150 a month. And they advertise to new customers that they will provide that same service for about half the price. And yet they won't make any concessions for existing customers. And that's a real frustration when the costs keep going up for existing customers, yet they offer just amazingly good deals for new ones. So that's probably just capitalism, but just so who you know, when you talk to them, that is really frustrating that they do that, and they just kind of thumb their nose at the guys that have been with them for years. And it's you almost have to. I ended up calling them and threatening to leave, and I got about a $40 or $50 reduction a month. I finally talked to somebody in a department that to do something, but it's still not enough.
No, and I agree. I think the same thing. I recognize personally the same situation. One of the requests I had from them because we have a bundle is that, I don't use this landline. I don't even, there's no reason for the landline. And when I tried to remove the landline that I was paying for, they actually increased my bill.
Yeah.
So to get rid of the landline, I didn't get the deal anymore, which isn't a deal at all because my bill's already gone up. But so yes, I understand. I get that that's capitalism, but there's got to be a better way to do that. So I will bring that up to them as well. Yeah, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Ted.
Hey, thank you. And Steve, before I say what I'm going to say, I want to say I think you're making great strides, and absolutely, I think what you're doing is phenomenal with that, and I hope that that benefits everybody a lot, because I really appreciate your work. So, and your work with Suddenlink and trying to, improve that and so forth. The one thing I was going to say though too is this is one of those, and this is TED Talk. Okay, so this is TED Talk. This is one of those companies that I don't personally trust. So when you're talking to them and when you're doing your stuff, just make sure and verify. And if they say they're going to do something, hold their feet to the fire. Just make sure they're going to actually do it. Because I know when me and Mr. Parsons met with them, oh my goodness, 2 years ago probably, and we were talking about all the gripes and complaints about dropping, internet service dropping multiple times during a day. The rep then flat out showed this data saying, well, that's not true. And I was one of the people that it actually did do all the time. And I had multiple support calls and everything else. And we never got through to him. The point being is he wasn't listening to us. We were telling him we had multiple complaints of droppages, including myself sitting across the table from you. And you're giving me these reports that says, no, that's not true. Well, so anyway, that's why I say, just make sure you're doing a great job. I think you've made great inroads. I hope it is very successful, because we need better service, and they're a major player and they can do it. So just hold them accountable if they're making promises to you, and just make sure they are listening, and keep up the good work. And I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. We'll keep on them.
Mr. Stewart, I apologize. I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
No worries. No worries. I've had your exact same, Mr. Mayor, I've had your exact same situation. Steve, I had the exact same situation. I call those guys and, oh yeah, you get rid of your one service and your bill doubles basically. It's frustrating. But this is what happens when you don't have any competition. They don't care because they know they're the only game in town. And whether it's total high speed, whatever, I would thoroughly encourage you guys. I know my remainder of my time on this board is very limited, but I'm going to say, please, 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 not only hold their feet to the fire the way Ted just said, talk to these other providers, talk to Total High Speed, talk to Verizon or whoever about, hey, what do we do to get true 5G rollout here in Ozark quicker? What do we need? The only way we're going to have these guys do anything is if they've got competition coming in. All of a sudden, people start leaving them. That's the only way it's going to happen. So whether it means we may not have the power to bring in another AT&T, but Total High Speed, who's doing wireless, whatever we have to do, anybody. I mean, heck, I mean, they've got fiber down on Center Road, which is 6-7 miles south of town. I don't understand why they have it down there and we can't have it in the city. I get complaints. I see complaints every single day on the Waterford subdivision Facebook page. Oh, my internet went down. My internet went down. My internet went down. Oh yeah, mine did too. Mine did too. Mine did too. And it's just so, and I know I'm just venting here, so I apologize, but we've got to figure out something because these guys stink. And I don't care who their owner is. I like Ted. I don't trust him for 1 second. I don't believe for 1 second they're going to do anything. I think we're too small. They don't care. That's just my personal opinion. Rant over.
Yeah, and that may be, I think that what you get, I mean, when you're talking on a large scale, like, and saying, we just want it to be better for the city of Ozark, we want it to be better. That's a very broad objective. And we all share that desire, but it's a broad objective. So just like in my meeting the other day, we work with lots of little individual issues that we have to, so it's relationship building, it's being able to talk to the right people. I also think that, you know, it's a money situation. And there's a ton of money at the federal level, as you well know, being pumped into expanding into rural areas. And you have to, you know, we had a meeting the other day, Mr. Flores was there with me, and you hear these providers that are saying, look, it costs $60,000 a mile to put in this fiber. And then you get to a guy's driveway and he's a mile out in the woods, and you got to get, so you only have like 5 people for this $60,000, and obviously that doesn't pay for itself. So I think we also need to be talking at the higher level, at the state and at the federal level, to say, listen, if you're going to be pumping all this money into expanding rural broadband, what about the communities of 20,000 plus that literally are the economy of the area, and we're not eligible for any of those funds to improve? I mean, it's something that needs to be communicated up the ladder, so that when they're looking at these infrastructure packages now, a $3 trillion infrastructure package, don't leave out the small communities where the majority of the people are, just to run a fiber to 5 people on a 60-mile stretch of road. I think there's an issue in that, but anyway.
Mike Kehoe, Lieutenant Governor, I've watched him talk about this stuff before too. I would say talk to him as well, because I know this is a big hot button for him. So I know it's a big hot button from a state perspective if he's involved in it. So talk to him too.
Well, I can assure you that the next 2 years at least, I know the new administration, there will be attempts made to look at more competition. Most of you know what I mean, and this isn't a dead issue. It's going to be worked on. Mr. Poston, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Steve, are you talking to them any about equipment? And I know this is going to be frustrating to some people, but there is a piece of this internet issue that resides at the consumer level. People are connecting more and more devices, and you don't have the home router set up to support it. If you haven't updated to a Wi-Fi 6 setup, which is not cheap, you can't support the number of devices that most people are trying to put on their system: phones, computers, streaming Netflix, smart home, smart light bulbs, Ring. Your system can't support that. Have you talked to Suddenlink about making sure that all of their router and all the equipment that they're putting into homes is Wi-Fi 6 compatible? And is Suddenlink or any of the other providers doing any sort of educational campaign to let consumers know that if you really want to connect these many devices, regardless of what your speeds are, you have to have a router system that can handle it?
That's actually an excellent question. again, using a personal experience, I was wondering why the speed that they said I was getting coming into my house wasn't being dispersed through my house to the individual rooms that it was supposed to be going on. And you would go to the TV and it would say something like not enough power, or there was some message that I was getting. And I learned, just like you said, that, well, you got to have a better router. And now we've got this router, but if that router that we have that you can get from Suddenlink, and it will be powerful enough, but you went to Best Buy and spent $49.99 on a router thinking that it was going to do all that stuff, you need to be wrong. So I think you hit something there that I want to bring up to them is you need to do an education campaign and let your customers know that they have to have the right equipment inside to be able to receive that 1 gig speed and do all that they need to in the house. I think that's a great point, and I think yes, I that is something that I will bring up to them at my next meeting, because I myself need a better router and I need to upgrade my stuff inside the house. So
Mr. Mayor.
Chuck has it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Chuck.
Hey, Nathan, real quick. Suddenlink just sent us an upgraded, unsolicited router. They sent it to the house. It was a Dickens to install, but we didn't ask for it. They just sent it to us, and it's wireless. It sped everything up exponentially. Although at the same time, we canceled the Suddenlink cable part of our services for the very reasons that all of you were talking about. And we personally switched over to YouTube. And as soon as Rick gets his second tower in, we'll probably switch over to his internet. But to your point, they did send us an upgraded a router.
Okay, again, there is a limit there, and I worry about people. You know, kids are getting phones. People are pushing a lot. Those connections are as important as your download speed. And if your system can't handle it, you're never going to get the download speed you're paying for.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anything from staff? Right, anything else, Steve, that you have?
No, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. I know sometimes we get you into the weeds with some of these topics, but like I said, I just want to make sure that you're all informed when you have upcoming things that you know you're going to have to take action on. So thank you all very much and have a wonderful day.
All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, okay, Smith and Poston, all in favor? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thanks.